First of all, there are so many people in this room who have helped me stay free, so thank you. You know who you are. I should call her Her Excellency, Madam President. Annalena, thank you. Now that I'm no longer a reporter chasing her, I want to tell you something about this woman who introduced me. Annalena Baerbock has stood up as foreign minister, as president of the General Assembly, on issues that made her a target. Any woman leader going against the crowd knows what comes next. The attacks, the disinformation, the deepfakes designed to destroy credibility and support. Research by our colleagues at the NERV, working with UN Women and UNESCO, shows that since 2020, online violence against women in the public sphere has more than doubled. So this isn't just a trend, it's a weapon. Annalena weathered all of it. That takes more than politics. That takes courage. She called me fearless. That's not quite true. I've been afraid many times. I mean, 11 arrest warrants in a little more than a year kind of does that. But Rappler has 4 women founders, and we made a pact among ourselves. Only one of us can be afraid at a time. So we passed the fear, right? We passed the fear because we all know that fear is real. I see it. I see it here, I feel it, and I understand. Those years, it's been almost a decade, taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that something else matters more. Values, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and at the core of who I am, partly because I'm old, this is my 40th year as a journalist, facts, truth, and trust, what Annalena always pulls out. Thank you to the United Nations Foundation, to everyone in this room who believes, as I do, that we the peoples is not just a preamble to the UN Charter, it is a promise. And it's a promise that's breaking. I accept this award like the Nobel, for every journalist who sits in a cell, for every fact checker targeted by a troll army or AI slop, for every newsroom fighting to survive. Last year in America, at least 2, in fact, more than 2 newsrooms closed. Every month, right? This is the front line of democracy, and we are losing ground. Annalena mentioned Manila, this small room where we sat with Laila de Lima. She was jailed unjustly for almost 7 years. I think about that room often because there we were, 3 women who understood without actually needing it to be explained that what happened to us and what was happening to us is not personal, it's a playbook. Instinctively early on, you heard, I called it death by 1,000 cuts. But over the years, we have granular data from Facebook, Twitter, now X, YouTube, and TikTok. We found the funnel, the 3 stages of democratic decay. Here are the 3. First, at the top, narrative warfare, those attacks, right? You flood the information ecosystem with lies until people can no longer tell fact from fiction. You weaponize social media, add deep fakes, and AI slop, that's synthetic content. You turn the tools of connection into tools of control. The second layer, you go down the funnel, you dismantle institutions, the press, the civil service, the courts. Anyone with the power to hold you accountable, you hollow them out or you take them over. which leads to the third, the bottom of the funnel, strategic corruption or kleptocracy. Once no one can see clearly and no one can check your power, you take everything. This isn't a theory, it's data-backed. This is what I lived through in the Philippines under Rodrigo Duterte. It's what Mzia Amaglobeli is living through right now in prison in Georgia. It's what we are watching unfold in country after country, including in what was once the most powerful democracy in the world. The founders of the United Nations understood something fundamental, that peace isn't the absence of war. We've heard this, right? Peace requires a shared reality. It requires that when we sit across the table from each other, whether it's the Security Council or in a village hall or in school, that we can agree on a baseline of facts. That, my friends, is what's being destroyed. And the three sentences that Annalena told you, I've said these over and over since 2016. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, we don't have a shared reality that this moment demands so that we can have radical collaboration. Without that shared reality, we cannot meet the moment. This isn't a media problem. This is an existential threat to multilateralism itself, to the UN. Because how do you negotiate a climate agreement when millions of people have been algorithmically fed the lie that climate change is a hoax? We heard this. How do you build a coalition for peace when entire populations live inside information bubbles designed to make them fear and hate each other? So what do? We fight back. I actually mean that literally because it's the working title of my next book, The Fight Back. Right? We do it with journalism, technology, and community, and I have three parts here. First, we reimagine journalism, not as a dying industry, but as critical democratic infrastructure. I want to start with distribution, which you don't hear enough about, right? So we can get away from the insidious manipulation of big tech. I'm tired of learned helplessness. At Rappler, we built a federated news platform using open protocols because if we don't want a handful of tech billionaires to control the information ecosystem, we have to build something different, something that belongs to all of us. France, Germany, Taiwan, 33 plus other nations are using the Matrix protocol. It is open source, decentralized, and secure. 150 million users, right? So let me go to second. We demand accountability from technology, and we must build alternatives. The AI revolution is here. As Annalena mentioned, I co-chair the UN Scientific Panel on AI, and we know that that same attention economy that enabled the exponential spread of lies is now supercharged by generative AI, that it's moved from the attention to intimacy with the chatbots. It will get worse. So we need guardrails, not after the damage is done, but now. At Columbia SIPA here in New York, where I co-lead the Technology and Democracy Initiative. And I want to ask, because she's here, Camille Francois is my co-lead. Stand up, Camille. We are doing exactly this with our incredible students. We're pioneering research on information harms, incubating and negotiating for open source trust and safety tools, so we set a floor for safety so anyone building on the web can have these safety tools, right? mobilizing public interest tech communities, and releasing critical research methods and data so that anyone, independent researchers, can hold power to account. This is what it looks like to not just diagnose the problem, it's been a decade, but to build the solution. And that leads to 3. You've heard the investment in the human rights, in the kind of work the UN is doing to save people, but you gotta not just save them in the physical world, you gotta save them in the virtual world, our minds, our emotions, right? We must invest. I've mentioned how we take back the distribution, how we build a public interest tech stack. Now we look at what flows through the tech. The International Fund for Public Interest Media, which I co-chair with Mark Thompson, exists because we believe the world must treat independent journalism the way it treats public health, as infrastructure that when it collapses, everything collapses with it. Let me end where Annalena began, with Ted Turner. I was in my early 20s when he made me the bureau chief in Manila. It is a full circle moment that I started at CNN, which he founded, and now stand here at the UN Foundation, which he also founded on the belief that facts and truth matter and that global cooperation is possible. I believe that. You believe that. Despite what we are living through, this moment of creative destruction, I have seen what happens when ordinary people refuse to look away, when we come together. I've seen it in courtrooms. I've seen it in newsrooms, in my newsroom. I've seen it tonight in so many of the people who have helped us stay alive and stay free in this room. Although it took a decade, I don't want to leave you depressed. The president who tried to close down Rappler and to jail me for the rest of my life, well, he's now detained at The Hague. He's facing charges of crimes against humanity. And the 11 criminal charges, well, Rappler's already won all its cases, and I have just one left to win. Impunity ends. That's what we need to remember at this moment, right? We the people, singular, one nation, is how the American Constitution begins. That the UN Charter begins with we the peoples, plural. That one letter, one small s, carries the entire weight of what makes a multilateral project different. It says that legitimacy doesn't flow from any single nation, it flows from all of us, every people, every voice. That S is worth fighting for. We the peoples. The question for all of us is whether we can live up to that promise. You have the power to reinvent, recreate, to make the United Nations, the UN Foundation, as strong as it was, or stronger than 80 years ago, right? Are we going to live up to that promise, or let it be rewritten by those who profit from our division? I choose to fight. You will too. I hope you will too. Thank you.